Welcome to Section 5 of the Front-End Web Development Using Go video course. In this section, we will complete the client-side features of the Gopherface web application. At the end of this section, we will have a fully functional social media website made with Go on both the back-end and the front end. In the first video, we will show you how to build the My Profile section of the Gopherface web app. In the second video, we will show you how to build the feature to upload a user's profile image without refreshing the web page. In the third video, we will show you how to build the search feature to find new friends to follow. In the fourth video, we will show you how to populate the user's friends list and unfollow friends. In the fifth video, we will show you how to build the social media feed feature. Finally, in the sixth video, we will provide you with ideas on how you can extend the capabilities of Gopherface. In this video, we will cover the following topics. We'll examine the updated database schema to support the new client-side features. We'll show you how to import the database dump to the MySQL database instance. And we'll show you how to implement the profile editing feature. Since we're moving on from Section 4 to Section 5, we need to make sure that we update the Gopherface app root environment variable so that it references Section 5. Edit the .profile file in your home directory and make sure that you've updated the Gopherface app root environment variable so that it references Section 5. Here's the kick command that we'll be using to provide instant kickstarts to the Gopherface project. We've provided a set of preloaded Gopher users for the Gopherface website. The login for each account shown here is the username without the @ sign, and the password for all these user accounts is Golang, that's lowercase G-O-L-A-N-G. For the examples, we will be using the 3D Gopher account. Here's the user interface for the My Profile page. This web page is used to allow the user to manage their profile information. The About field is where the user can enter their biodata. The Location field is where the user can enter their location. And the Interests field is where the user can enter their hobbies and interests. Let's open up the gopherfacedb.sql source file in the config directory. In order to implement the new client-side features to Gopherface, we have to update the current database schema. We've introduced 3 new tables to the database. User Profile will store user profile information. Friend Relation will store information on the friends that a particular Gopher is following. Finally, the Post table will hold social media posts. We create a new table called User Profile, which contains the information that will be displayed in a user's profile and in the search results summary when finding a user. The UUID field is the unique ID for the given user. This UUID field can be joined with the UUID field in the user table when performing queries. The About field is used for the user's biodata. The Location field is used for the user to enter what location they are using Gopherface from. The Interests field is used for the user to enter their hobbies and interests. The Profile image path is the path to the user's profile image relative to the server root. The created_ts and updated_ts are the creation and last updated timestamps for the record. Finally, we have specified a unique constraint on the UUID field, and right below that, we have indicated that the UUID field will serve as our primary key. We've created the friend_relation table to assist us with keeping track of the friends that a particular user follows. The owner_UUID is the user ID for a given user account. This field can be joined with the UUID field in the user table. The friend underscore UUID is the user ID for the friend that the Gopher is following. This field can also be joined with the UUID field in the user table. We've defined the created underscore TS and updated underscore TS fields here, which again are the creation and last updated timestamps for the record. Finally, we've created a unique composite key called relation on the owner underscore UUID field and the friend underscore UUID field. The last table that we've created is the post table. This table is used to store social media posts submitted by our users. Again, we have the UUID field since that is the unique ID for the given user. This field can be joined with the UUID field in the user table. The title field is the caption for the social media post. The body field is the message body. This field is used to store the body of the social media post. The mood field is to store the integer value of the user's current mood. And finally, we've defined the created underscore TS and updated underscore TS, which again are the creation and last updated timestamps for the record. If you need to get up to speed with using Docker and MySQL, you should review the material that was presented in the previous video course on back-end web development using Go. In order to preload the Gophers and load the updated database schema, we need to import the MySQL data dump. We have the data dump file located in the config directory. The gfdbdump.sql file is the database dump file that contains the updated database schema along with existing users and feed posts. Let's start up the Docker container that has the Gopherface MySQL database instance using the following command: docker start Gopherface MySQL. Now, we can run the following command to import the database dump to the Docker container running our MySQL instance. Let's open up the gopherface.go source file. We have registered the /myprofile route here, which will be handled by the myprofile handler function. This handler is used to access the myprofile section and to render the web page that allows the user to manage their profile information. Right below that, we've registered the /profile route. This route will be handled by the profile handler function. This route will be used when accessing a particular user's profile. Notice that we have this username parameter here defined in the route. The username corresponds to the username of the user account. In this block of code, we have registered our Rest APi endpoints. The client-side application will be powered by the Rest endpoints defined here. The getUserProfile endpoint is responsible for getting the user profile record so that we can populate the field values in the web page that allows the user to manage their profile. The SaveUserProfile endpoint is responsible for saving the updates made to a given profile. And finally, the getGopherProfile endpoint is responsible for fetching a user profile that is to be displayed on a user's profile page. Let's open up the mysql.go source file in the common/datastore directory. We use the getUserProfile function here to fetch the user profile record for a given user. The function takes in a UUID and it will return the user profile record and an error object. Here's the query we use to fetch the user profile. We call the query row method on the statement object to query the database and save the returned row. We call the scan method on the fetched row object to save the retrieved records fields into the user profile objects fields. The very next function is the getGopherProfile function. This function is used to get a particular user's profile, and it's used to power a given user's profile page. The main difference between this function and the previous one is our SQL query. In the user's profile, we want to display the user's name So we join the user profile table with the user table, with this where clause here. We follow the exact same procedure to query the database and save the user profile record. Here, we have defined the update user profile function. This function is responsible for saving a user's profile. Notice that we start a transactional block by making the call to begin here. In our SQL query, we use the insert into statement to save the user profile record. If the user profile record for the given UUID does not exist, then it will be created. If the user profile record for the given UUID already exists, then that particular user profile record will be updated with the values we provide after the onDuplicateKey update clause here. Here we execute the SQL statement, and over here we commit the SQL transaction. Now that we've set up the needed functionality in the data store, let's set up the MyProfile form. Let's open up the myprofile.go source file in the forms directory. Here we have defined a new MyProfile form type. Over here, we have type embedded the isokit.basic form. The basic form type from the isokit package allows us to validate forms on both the client side and the server side. In the new MyProfile form function defined here, we take in a single input argument of type isokit.formParams, and the function will return a MyProfile form instance. The form params is a struct that can be used on both the server side and the client side. On the server side, we can access the response writer and the HTTP request object from the form params object itself. And from the client side, we can access the DOM element that represents the form element. The prefill fields variable is a string slice of all the fields that we wish to prefill. If the user makes an error while submitting the form, these values will be retained and automatically populated in the form, so the user doesn't have to fill them out again. We've defined the map fields having a key of type string and a value of type string. This map represents the form fields and their current value. The key in this field corresponds to the value that we have set for the ID property in the input element of the form. We have defined the map errors having a key of type string and value of type string. This map represents the errors for each form field and their current value. All the current form submission errors are stored in this map. We create a new MyProfile form instance here. We call the setPrefillFields method on the MyProfile form object to set the fields to prefill. We call the setFields method on the MyProfile form object to set the fields and their respective values. We call the setErrors method on the MyProfile form object to set the errors. We call the setMyFormParams to set the form parameters object. And finally, we return the newly created MyProfile form instance. Inside our validation function here, we make this call to the regenerateErrors method of the MyProfile form object. This method is responsible for clearing any current errors that are stored in the form. The populateFields call is responsible for persisting the values that are already stored in the form. The validate function's primary purpose is to make sure that the user has filled out the required fields, and if any values are missing, to provide the user a message that indicates where they went wrong when they were filling out the form. In this if conditional here, we check if the About Text area field has been filled out by the user. If it hasn't been filled out, then we display an error message by calling the setError method on the MyProfile form object. In this if conditional here, we check if the location field has been filled out by the user. If it hasn't, then we display an error message here. Similarly, in this if conditional, we check if the interest field has been filled out. And if it hasn't, then again we display an error message here. We check to see if the number of errors found is greater than 0. If it is, we return a Boolean value of false, indicating that the form was not filled out properly. If there were no errors found, then the form validated properly, so we return a Boolean value of true. Let's open up the myprofile.go source file in the handlers directory. Here's the server-side myprofile handler, which is responsible for handling the /myprofile route. We create a new form params instance here and specify the values for the fields for the response writer object and the request object. We then create a new instance of the myprofile form. We fetch the Gopher face session and assign it to the variable gf session. Remember that in order to query the database to get the user profile, we need the user account's UUID. We fetch the current user's UUID from the session, and we assign it to the variable UUID. We then call the getUserProfile method on our MySQL data store object and specify the UUID value that we obtained from the session. As you may recall, this method will return a user value of type userProfile, which we assign to the variable u here. We populate the user's username field from the session over here, and we populate the form and page title fields of the user profile record. Finally, we call the render method on the template set, and we specify that we want to render the myprofile_page template, and we pass in the render parameters, which consist of the HTTP response writer object and the user profile record, which will be the data object that is passed to the template. Let's open up the profile.go source file in the handlers directory. Over here, we extract the variables that are part of the route by calling the vars method on the GorillaMux_router object and passing in the HTTP request object as the sole input parameter to this method. We then obtain the username from the vars map by specifying the key of username. We use the username variable that we extracted from the route as the input parameter to the getGopherProfile method of the MySQL data store object. This will return the user profile for the given username. We populate the page title field of the user profile record here. And finally, we call the render method on the template set, and we specify that we want to render the Gopher profile page template, and we pass in the render parameters as the second argument to the method. Let's open up the myprofile_page.html source file in the templates directory. We first define that this block here will be the page content block. Inside the page content block, we render the my_profile content template. Finally, we make a call to render the web page layout template, which will render the page content section inside of it. Let's open up the myprofile_content.html source file in the templates directory. At the very top here, we show the page title, which will be My Profile. Inside the form container div, we've defined our form. This is the form that will be used to manage the profile information. We display the username of the account as an H2 heading here. This block of code is for the profile image upload feature, which we'll be visiting in the second video. We can skip this region for now. We've defined the About text area element here, and right below it is where we've defined the span that will contain the error message if the user doesn't fill out the About text area. We've defined the location input text field here, along with the span that will contain its respective error message here. And over here, we've defined the interests input text field, along with the span that will contain its respective error message. Finally, we have the Save Profile button defined here. When the user clicks the Save Profile button, an XHR call will be made to the Rest endpoint that is responsible for saving the user profile. Let's open up the Gopher profile_page.html source file in the templates directory. We first define that this block here will be the page content block. Inside the page content block, we render the Gopher profile_content template. Finally, we make a call to render the web page layout template, which will render the page content section inside of it. Let's open up the gopher profile underscore content.html source file in the templates directory. This template displays the content for a user's profile page. In this div container, we will display the profile image. In this div, we will display the username. And in this div container, we will display the contents for the About section. And in this div container, we will display the location value. And finally, in this div container, we will display the interests value. Let's open up the client.go source file in the client directory. Inside our initialize event handlers function, we have introduced the following case statement to call the initialize myProfile event handlers function from the handlers package. This function is responsible for setting up the event handlers on the UI elements of the myProfile page. Let's open up the myprofile.go source file in the client/handlers directory. We declare the myProfile form here. Inside our myProfile handler function, we create a new instance of a myProfile form object and assign it to the myProfile form variable that we just declared. We create a channel of type userProfile. This channel will be used to receive the user profile. We then make a call to the getUserProfileRequest function, and we supply the profile channel as an input argument to the function. This function is responsible for making an XHR call to the REST endpoint that is responsible for getting a user's profile. Here, we receive the user profile on the profile channel and save it to the variable u. We set the form field of the profile user object, and we set the page title of the profile user object. We make a call to the render method on the template set and specify that we want to render the myProfile underscore content template. Remember that when we are on the client side, we just need to render the content template, since the full web page has already been rendered and we are only rendering the portion of the web page that is different from another section. We supply the render params. We set the data field to the user profile. With the disposition field, we indicate that we want to replace the inner contents of the associated DOM element. And finally, we set the element field to the primary content div where the section content is rendered to. Finally, we call the initialize myProfile event handlers function to initialize events on the myProfile page. We need this call here to successfully set up the events on the DOM elements if the user were to access the myProfile section through the client side. Inside the initialize myProfile event handlers function, we check to see if the myProfile form is nil, and if it is, we create a new instance of a myProfile form object and assign it to the myProfile form variable. We then obtain the Save Profile button by calling the getElementById method on the document object. We add an event listener to call the Verify Profile form when the Save Profile button is clicked. We can skip the rest of the code in this function since they will be covered in later videos. Let's take a look at the Verify Profile form function. We first get the form element by calling the getElementById method on the document object. Here, we set the form params, and notice that we set the form element field. We then call the validate method on the profile form object to obtain a Boolean value that indicates if the form was properly filled out or not. If the form was properly validated, we get the values filled in the About text area, the location field, and the interest field. We create a new instance of a user profile and set the About, location, and interest fields with their respective values. We then call the Save Profile Request function as a Go routine to update the profile. If the form did not validate, we reached the else block and we called the Display Errors method on the profile form object. Let's take a look at the Save Profile Request function. This function is responsible for sending the XHR call to the REST endpoint to save the user profile. We call the send method on the XHR object and we specified that we are going to be posting to the save user profile route. The profile bytes variable is the JSON representation of the user profile. We checked to see if there were any errors in the process, and if there were, we used the Alertify object to show an error notification. Alertify is a JavaScript library that provides us a nice, clean way of displaying notifications. If there were no errors, we indicate that the profile was saved successfully with Alertify. Notice that the input argument to the getUserProfile request function is a channel of type userProfile. We make an XHR call by calling the send method on the XHR object, indicating that the request will use the get method, and we want to access the getUserProfile REST endpoint. The response returned from the server will be in JSON format. We unmarshal the JSON representation into the variable u, which is of type userProfile. We then send the userProfile object over the profile channel. We'll be covering the rest of the source file later on in this section. Let's open up the saveuserprofile.go source file in the endpoints directory. Inside the saveuserprofile endpoint function, we first obtain the Gopher face session. From the session, we extract the user's UUID. We call the readAll function from the IOUtil package to read the request body. We then JSON unmarshal the contents of the request body to the variable u, which is of type userProfile. We call the updateUserProfile method of the MySQL data store object, specifying the UUID and the value for the about field, the value for the location field, and the value for the interest field as input arguments to the method. Let's open up the getUserProfile.go source file in the endpoints directory. Inside the getUserProfile endpoint function, we first obtain the Gopher face session. From the session, we extract the user's UUID. We supply the UUID to the getUserProfile method of the MySQL data store object and save the result to the variable u. We populate the username field of the userProfile object with the username value found in the Gopher face session. We write out a header indicating that the response will be in JSON format, and then we write out the JSON encoded userProfile object here. Let's open up the My Profile page. I've logged into Gopher face as a 3D Gopher user using the password Golang. Let's hit the Save button without filling out the form. We expect to see the form error messages appear in their respective locations. And now we can confirm that we get the descriptive errors indicating that we didn't fill out the form in the proper manner. Now let's fill out the form properly. When I hit the Save button, we get this notification here that the form was saved properly. To verify that our profile was updated properly, let's open up our profile page by specifying the route /profile/3dgopher. On our profile page, we can confirm that our profile details were saved successfully. Everything's working as expected.